Today, I have since run for Miss Maine. I am now Miss Maine.
Ta-da!
Um, I work for the WNBA, and I've moved from Maine to Connecticut and proposed at an Adele concert, and we're getting married. We actually just booked our venue yesterday in March in the Florida Keys. So the
Mhm.
guidance that you provided was genuinely what helped me navigate the entire process and just trust my gut and trust my
Mhm.
why and
Yes.
know that if I eventually got to the right job, it would all just come together, and it really has.
Hey everyone, it is Coach Mo here with another fabulous Coach Mo Live and a fabulous client story like
So
none other. Kirsty, welcome to Coach Mo Live. I am so looking forward to you telling your story. What a ride you have been on since just before we met, because I met you in the coaching workshop, but just before that, something was going on that wasn't jiving for you in your career. Tell us what that was and where you are now, and then we're going to dive into all of that over the next few minutes or so. I can't wait to dive in. But what was the before and after shot here?
absolutely. So I had initially gotten introduced to you actually back when I was in college. I had been following your
That's
podcast,
right.
and I'd started following your path. It was back when I was in college, and there weren't really any women's leadership talks going on. There weren't all of the conferences that they have now. I went to Bryant University, and they had one women's leadership summit every year. It was really difficult to get tickets. So I started following a lot of different podcasts, and I don't even know how fell into you and Kathy's podcast, but it was my Bible back then. I
Yeah.
listened every week. I was following along 24/7, and I followed you on social media.
Yeah.
And about 6 years later, I had been in the same job since I graduated college. I had moved up really quickly through the
Mhm.
ranks, and they were constantly really struggling to find that next opportunity for
Yeah.
me. I was 26 years old. I'd been in management for a little bit. They had created a more national role for me. I was living in Maine. I'm from Maine. I had a little bit outgrown the
Yes.
opportunities
Yep.
that the company had and also that geographically was
Mhm.
available to me.
Mhm.
Um, I had been in a new relationship. I had just moved in with my partner at the time. And I just was feeling this in my gut. I knew something wasn't right. I had recently taken a pretty aggressive pay cut.
Mm.
I knew my worth, and I knew that I was ready and primed for bigger and better things. But
Yeah.
the mentorship that was available to me was within the company. I was struggling to look for who to turn
Yeah.
to. I started making a list of just people I admired, and you were on the list. And
Mhm.
I started diving into how am I going to reach these people? And you were
Yeah.
one of the only ones that was accessible. um, so,
Yay.
I had reached
Yeah.
out. I got a quote, and I started talking about what the experience was going to look like, and everything sounded perfect. What I really needed at that moment was just someone to hold my hand through that next step.
Mhm.
And I was really looking to do something that most people within my circle at the time had never done. I had, by all counts, a successful career, and I was only
Yep.
26, and not many people know what to do with
Yeah.
that. Many people in my field had had the same success I had in 20 or 30 years.
Mhm.
And they would say, most people would have said, just stay still. You're
Right.
making great money.
Yeah.
You've accomplished a lot. Just
Yeah.
stay still. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. And I was getting more irritable by the day. I was
Yeah.
feeling really high anxiety. I
Yeah.
just was not feeling fulfilled. I didn't want to go to work every day.
Yeah.
And my partner was a business owner, and she was so engaged and excited about her work. And she's a basketball coach,
Mhm.
as a quick
Yeah.
aside. And I was spending a lot of my free time as a part of the Maine Women's Conference, which is the board that I sit on, going to women's conferences at this point and going to women's basketball games and girls' basketball
Mhm.
games with her. And it's all I wanted to talk about 24/7. I talked about what I did in my free time a lot more than I talked about what I did at
Yeah.
work. And my work just wasn't fueling me at
Yep.
all. Today, I have since run for Miss Maine. I am now Miss Maine.
Ta-da!
Um, I work for the WNBA, and I've moved from Maine to Connecticut and proposed at an Adele concert, and we're getting married. We actually just booked our venue yesterday in March in the Florida Keys. So
All right.
a lot has
Yeah.
happened, and genuinely, I just tell Christina every single day, my partner, I tell her, like, I cannot believe how well this all worked out. I mean, even
Yeah.
the condo I'm sitting in
Uh-huh.
was a dream when I first started applying for jobs everywhere. And
Mhm.
the guidance that you provided was genuinely what helped me navigate the entire process and just trust my gut and
Mhm.
trust my why,
Yes.
and know that if I eventually got to the right job, it would all just come together, and it really
Yeah.
has.
I will say something that, a lot of our clients have been told. You're a handful. And and when that's what's going on, you're right. People don't know what to do with you. And so it's super easy to put you back in that container and say, "You're young, just have patience. It'll all come together." And you're like, "I'm not gonna have any of that."
Or it was get married, have kids, focus on something that isn't just work.
Ah,
And
oh,
I think for me, it's yes, I do want all of that,
yeah,
but I'm a worker.
yeah,
I knew
you
that
are.
working was going to be something that was a part of me. And
Yes.
I remember the early parts of my first career where I was so excited and I was so engaged and the ideas were flowing out of me and I could feel the creative
Mhm.
spirit. And it wasn't a force to get me to really be excited about my work day. And I
Get it in
knew
you.
something else would draw that
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. And so when we started coaching, I remember thinking, all right, this woman's on a roll. She's got a lot to offer and it's not happening for her where she is. And I know we talked about moving somewhere and you mentioned as long as it has, a division 1 school, I think is what you said to me. So as long as it's division 1 school, we should be all right. Um, and there was some resistance as well because as you're being raised as most women, it's like, all right, do the right thing, do the nice thing, do the thing that other people want you to do. And
Right.
you're somewhere between 15 and 20 years younger than most of the women who were in the workshop.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, they all looked at me pretty shocked
yeah,
day
yeah,
one.
yeah. It's like, well, she wants something more. Like that's what we do. We help
Right.
women get something more. So, what was one of the most surprising things that you learned in that 12-week journey together? What was like,
I
"Oh, wow."
I think the first surprising thing I learned was just how similar all of our stories were. And that's one thing I love about women in general.
Yeah.
When you get enough of us in a
Yes.
room, there's so many, there's so much collaboration in general and so much empathy and
Mhm.
support. But outside of that, there's a lot of stories that overlap. And I was finding that it didn't matter if these women were in tech and they've been in their careers for 40 years
Mhm.
or they were in sales or marketing.
Mhm.
We all were coming up against the
Yep.
same, mostly internal reasons that we
Mhm.
weren't pursuing our next goal
Yep.
and a lot of personal and emotional baggage that was getting in our way.
Yep.
And I think we were finding that, yes, there are certain people at work we didn't get along with, or yes, there were certain promotions we wanted that we didn't get. Um, but a lot of the things stopping us were
Yeah.
ourselves, and like our self
Yes.
deprecating,
Yes.
habits.
Mhm.
So I was learning that firstly, I was inspired by all of their stories. I looked up to a lot of these women.
Mhm.
They were in a lot of the roles that I
Yeah.
wanted. And if they were in the same place as me, 30 years further in their career, I knew, okay, I'm doing something right. I'm investing in the right way.
Yes.
Um, and also, I think it was a really nice balance of it was focused as much on emotions and what fuels me and my
Mhm.
passion and like meditation and self, care
Mhm.
as it was professional
Yep.
development. And I, professional development wise, I felt like I knew I was doing the right things. I have a great LinkedIn. I have a
Mhm.
great resume.
Mhm.
I am at every networking
Yeah.
event I could possibly be at. I've been in sales my whole
Yeah.
life. So I knew that wasn't where I needed work. And a lot of the trainings and programs I was looking at, it was just going to be here's a program, set it and forget it, fill out your resume and LinkedIn,
Right.
and then you'll get a job.
Mhm.
And with you, it was so much more personal. I heard more women talking about their family lives
Mhm.
than I did talk about their careers. And it's because for a lot of us, that's our why.
Yeah.
And when you can align those two things, it really isn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will also say this, you enjoy being in the spotlight. You want to be seen as successful. You want to enjoy a nice life and 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 you're uncompromising in that. And to me, a coach's dream, honestly, because you have this internal motivation factor. And so as you were going through the journey, what was the thing for you that allowed you to finally see, yeah, I'm going to play at a bigger level. This is not working for me now. I really have to go somewhere else.
I think when I started to fill out some of the worksheets, and again, me applying for Miss Maine was the first big step that I took through the whole program. And
Yeah.
unlike everyone else's win of the week, I was like, I'm running for United States of America's Miss Maine. And they were like, okay, that's a big one. Here we are.
Exactly.
And by the end of this program, we're going to know if I won or
Yeah.
not. And it was so not work related
Yes.
at the time. It
Mhm.
felt very like a side quest.
Mhm.
It didn't feel related to what I should be working on. But when I was making a list of what excited me as a child and what made me excited to get up and day and what I wasn't pursuing or hadn't pursued because of limits I'd put on myself or what other people were thinking of me,
Mhm.
it constantly reminded me, like, I love the stage. I was a competitive cheerleader performer my whole life. I missed it.
Mhm.
I shied away from modeling and a lot of opportunities to be an anchor or be on air because of what I thought people were going to assume and think of me, that I wasn't as smart or I wasn't as
Uh-huh.
well spoken because I was leaning onto my
Yeah.
looks. Um, and I started using, finding these opportunities that I'd really counted myself out of
Mhm.
for no reason except for I had just been really afraid about what other people were going to think. And
Yes.
my partner continued to tell me, she was like, why not you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you win Miss
Yeah.
Maine? What do you have that everyone else doesn't?
Right.
Or what do they
But
have
you
that
know.
you don't?
Yeah.
And, deciding, making that decision and then having all these women be like, absolutely, let's do this. We're going to do this together and you're going to
Yeah.
win. And even if you don't win, think about how much you're pushing yourself outside
Right.
of your comfort zone. And the competition itself wasn't half as terrifying as just posting that I was competing
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
And saying, I think I can compete in this and I think I can win is the scariest part.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Winning was great, but genuinely by the time I competed, I was like, I'm just happy I did it.
Yes.
Um, and what came next was just, icing on the cake.
And I have to give you a lot of kudos for a few things. Number one, you are absolutely correct in most things in life. The going for it, the initial step is the thing that people most fear. And so,
Right.
obvious bravo to you. And then once you claim your worth by traveling through that threshold, like the pressure is sort of off right now. Now you can just
And then all of a sudden, my next goal
go bigger.
is like something I've never even written down or dreamed of. It completely unlocked. And I think that
Yes.
was the biggest thing I tell people about trying something you haven't tried or running for Miss Maine or whatever
Yeah.
it's going to be. Your brain unlocks a whole new category of
Hmm.
opportunities, and they might be in a direction you never expected. And I'm a planner. I mean, I was joking with my university staff I was on with yesterday that I wrote my plan to go to Bryant in 7th grade. I knew I was going to go there for college. I knew when I was going to get married. I knew when I was going to have kids. I knew what my job would be. And up until I genuinely worked with you, I had done all of
Uh
it
huh.
exactly as
Uh
planned
huh.
since I was 12 or 13 years old. And it was the first time that I started saying, okay, this was my goal and my dream, and I've hit it. And now what?
Right.
And it took me taking myself out of my comfort zone as something far removed from my actual work and family life to say, wow, what else could I do? And that's how the WNBA professional sports started looking really, appetizing to me.
Yeah.
And then I started pursuing that path.
Yeah. Yeah. What a perfect combination of a woman who really nailed it on sales production. You were working for a local media organization, as I recall, and to play at that next level. And hey, the WNBA wasn't as sexy then as it is today, but still, it was a
I know
pretty
I'm getting a
pretty
lot of
sweet gig.
credit for my foresight here. And I feel like I got a little bit of insider information with the idea that I started dating my partner, a couple of years ago now, and she is obsessed with women's
Yeah.
basketball. She would say, you are applying for all these jobs, and then you're researching the company to say, do they invest in women? Do they
Right.
care about LGBTQ rights?
Right.
Do they do all of these things? Do they check all the
Yeah.
boxes? And, what if you don't like your day to day work? And then she was applying for coaching positions and started saying, a lot of these jobs look like they would be perfect for you, and you get to watch basketball
Yeah.
all day, you get to invest in young women, you get to support women of color
Yeah.
and women in
Yeah.
LGBTQ groups. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this does line up
Yeah.
perfectly. And that was the main reason I went for it. And then look what's happened.
I mean, you're in the spotlight on what you chose to declare for yourself. I can be seen as beautiful, competent, and in the spotlight, and I'm going to go for that. I can take my sales skills to a corporate culture that is going to support me, what I care about, and allow me to be in total flow.
And I wasn't concerned about a lot of the questions I got in my interview process. My now boss, Jen Rosati, is a basketball legend. And she asked, do
Uh-huh.
you know anything about women's basketball? And I frankly said no. I've watched a lot of girls basketball, child basketball,
Yeah.
but I'm really good at sales and I'm really good at collaboration and partnerships. There's nothing I believe more in than the power of women.
Mhm.
And I think that can translate here. And I believe in myself in that way. And she was like, fair enough.
Yeah.
I believe you
Yeah.
too. And I didn't even try to fake it. I didn't try
Yeah.
to name a basketball player. I was like, I know what I don't know, but I know what I think I'm better than everyone else at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's believed me since day one. And I believe it's starting to pay off.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I'm grateful she took that
Yeah.
chance on
Yeah.
me.
Well, coming through that confidence level of believing in yourself, like I know that when we started working together, you believed in your skills, but I don't think that it was totally lined up in the interiors. And
I
now,
really believed in the results I had produced and what I had been told were my strengths. I didn't see how that could translate outside of kind of the box I had
yeah,
been put in.
yeah. And look at you now. So, with all of the progress, all of the amazing, exciting things that you have stepped into, what's possible now? 6 months, 12 months, 5 years. I mean, what's this looking like now? The explosion of your life.
Well, genuinely, I've only been in this role for 6
Uh-huh.
months. I'm excited to go to work every single day. I'm thrilled for this
Yeah.
season to kick off
Yeah.
and to see what happens. I keep comparing this role to a rocket ship.
Mm.
Like, I'm just grateful that I have a secure role in a
Yeah.
leadership
Mhm.
position within this team right now,
Yeah.
because being in women's sports is highly competitive. I went to a women's sports summit last weekend and there were a good 300 young women looking to just have a conversation with one of us about the potential to one day work in women's sports.
Uh-huh.
And that is just so far removed from what was happening when I was in college.
Yeah.
And, there was a time when I wouldn't have even considered a job in this industry because I wouldn't have thought you could make money.
Mm.
And now I think if I just sit here long enough, there's going to be enough money being thrown at me that I'm going to make a great amount of
Yeah.
money. And
Yeah.
it really is just trusting your gut. And like in the next couple of years, I have never been more certain that opportunities are just going to continue to present themselves to me. The largest thing I focus on more than anything career development wise is just like trusting my own gut
Yes.
and trusting that when the next opportunity presents, I'm going to be prepared for it. So
Absolutely.
I'm learning as much about this role as possible. I'm
Mhm.
learning as much about the industry as possible and like continuing if something interests me to lean into that. Because for all I know, it's going to be, let's say the NIL deals or
Mhm.
something else where I find my next opportunity off
Mhm.
of this. And I think the WNBA is so progressive and it's been, a world-class organization for years.
Mhm.
And I'm just here at the right time.
Yeah.
But I have a fantastic boss and like I really look up to her and she really believes in me and sees my strengths. And the people around me are really open to hearing my ideas. And as long as that is the culture that I'm in, I don't see myself going anywhere. And again, whatever opportunity presents to me next, I think as long as I stay true to my core values and what I'm
Yeah.
really good at and show value in the role that I'm in, I think that I'll be fine for the next
Right.
20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And who knows? I mean, I don't know where I'm going to be in 2
Yeah.
years.
Exactly.
And I'm not
Yeah.
really worried about it.
Exactly. So earlier in our conversation, there were these external voices. There was these supposed tos. There was these stay in your box. There was this, you're a handful. I don't even want to deal with it types of things. Where are you now with having banished all of that bullshit?
Yeah, I remember my first day on my first job. I asked for a meeting with the general manager, and I was 21 years old. I was like, "Can I take you to lunch?" He was just shocked. And he sat down with my previous boss now and said, "I do not know what you're going to do with her. She is going to run out of challenges the next six
Yeah.
months. She is already so far ahead of where, all of the other, let's say, salespeople were at the time. And I've
Hmm.
always been really hungry for that next step. And
Hmm.
growing up, it was something that I was constantly told, like, stop and smell the
Right.
roses and be appreciative and be
Yep.
mindful. But I think you can do all of
Yeah.
that and still know that there's something bigger for you.
Absolutely.
Um, and genuinely, I just don't look outside at all.
Good.
I think
Excellent.
in sales, you have the one benefit of knowing when you're doing well.
Yes.
And so it isn't like other careers where you have to check in with your bosses or anything. It's like, I know my numbers are good.
Yeah.
So I know I'm doing great at
Yeah.
this job. Um, and I also am really, really selective about who I ask feedback from. I don't ask feedback from anyone whose lives and roles I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
If if
Mm-hmm.
I ask, what have you been up to recently? And they just say, oh, I'm so busy. I barely see my family. I'm really unhappy. I'm not going to ask what they
Right.
think about my life and my job.
Yes.
If I meet someone who is making $1 million and loves their job and wakes up every day refreshed and spends time with their family, I'm going to ask them
Yeah.
because they've gotten something
Yeah.
right. And it's constantly just reassessing, who am I looking up to right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I was always back then looking for a mentor. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted someone to basically say, this is the path that got me here, or this is the path that got Sheryl Sandberg here, and you're going to follow those exact steps.
Yes.
And the reality is, like, what I've done right now, no one has ever done.
Yes.
And I'm aware of that. And I know that my next step, no one has ever done that either.
Yeah.
And we're all on a path that won't make any sense when looking
Yeah.
backwards.
You can only connect the
And
dots
it's not
looking
going
back,
to be
not going
linear.
forward. Yeah, that's so absolutely true. What would you say to another woman feeling like she's in a box? Other people have kept her there. They've told her she's a handful. What would you say to that woman now about your journey, about investing in yourself to learn how to get rid of all that space that's not necessary? What would you say to her?
I would say, firstly, to identify someone who you think has overcome something similar, where you can just start to pick her brain a little bit. Ask for 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to just talk through your experience and ask what she would do in that situation. Because I'm blessed to have a lot of really good girlfriends who I'm able to call when I'm in a pinch and just say, how would you navigate this?
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to give me the outside perspective. It might seem so closed and small and you're stuck in that moment, but from an outside perspective, it probably is. That's not the case. And I would say, secondly, like, really get true on what motivates you and what your core values are and what you're looking for in a day to day. And if you are certain that the role you are in just doesn't fuel you, or that it doesn't feel right, the people around you don't believe in you, then you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can fix a broken unit.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk with so many young women who will say, I really want to work in the NFL, or I really want to work in the MLB. And a lot of those teams are wonderful, and they're focused on DEI and they uplift their women, and a lot of them aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I have never run into that at the WNBA.
Yeah.
I am in a place where the men have to push to speak up. And it's a completely different environment than the company I was working for before. And
Mm-hmm.
it isn't ever, you don't need a women's group. You don't need an LGBTQ group. Like, DEI is baked into the culture of the company and what we do every day.
Yes.
And there doesn't have to be some fun side organization investing us.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I always ask them, why do you want to work in the NFL? Are you really passionate about football? Or in your brain, do you think men's sports are of higher value than women's sports? And like, try to question your whys.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about the experience of, I walked in at 28 years old at a director level, it's not something that a lot of bosses would have done. They would have put me at a lower level. I had a female hiring me, and she was able to say, yes, I believe in her.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 28, people took a risk on me and knew I was capable.
There you go.
And so she did it with me. And I just don't think you're going to find that culture everywhere. And I think culture is like a buzzword that everyone throws around. I am so sick of seeing companies with great culture, because I don't think it's the truth everywhere. And I would, as you're applying for jobs, call women there. Find people who look like you and, have similar goals to you, and ask for 10 minutes of their time and say, offline, what is your experience been? Because a lot of us on panels and everything will say, oh, it's a great place to work and they've supported me in XYZ. But like, are you currently looking for another job?
Right.
Because I don't want to be mentored by someone who doesn't really want to work there. And a lot of times that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say a generational thing to you, because we are different generations. And I am so delighted to hear the ease in which you're talking about your power. I'm so delighted to hear about the first 10 years of your career. You learned so much about what it takes to be successful. And the number one thing is that you got to be you. And if other people are trying to put you in a box, you're like, no, I'm going to reject that.
And I think one superpower I shied away from and leaned into, and it was kind of a flow of like, I'm going to try this, then I'm going to be told I'm too much. I'm going to try this again and be told I'm too much, was trusting my gut. I have really strong intuition, and I'm able to gauge market trends and guess what is going to be the next hot thing. And I was finding success in the early parts of my career, and I would try something, find a lot of success in it, and then kind of be pushed back into what I'm supposed to be doing every day. And then I would do it again, and then I would get accolade, and then be pushed back. And I think that as I started to learn how to guide myself through my career and speak up for myself, it was like, no, I know what I'm doing here, and I would like you to listen. And if you tell me no, I'm probably going to do it anyway. And I started to get known for that. You know, good luck telling her she's not going to do it, because she's going to do it, and she's probably going to prove you wrong. And I think you just have to be afraid to take that challenge, because new ideas aren't comfortable. Like new ideas, especially when you're young and you're in a new role. I'm always saying, I'm only in the first 6 months here. Listen to my ideas, because I have an outside perspective and I'm not jaded yet. In a year or so, I'm going to be used to the culture. I'm going to be used to how processes are done, and I'm not going to have the same perspective. So take advantage of while I'm still a baby here. And when I know certain things don't feel right and could be improved on. And it's like, you have to trust your gut, and you have to know that if something can be done better, you could be the person to have the idea. And like, young women, I tell all the time, if you are not, it's going to be terrifying, and you might be looked at odd, and they might have already tried it or whatever. But I always say, if you're too scared, find someone who will like project your idea for you. Find it. It could be a man, it could be a woman, it could be just an ally in the workplace to say, I think I have a good idea. Can I have 5 minutes of your time? And if it's worth it, will you help me pitch it? Because that handhold really helps. And hopefully you find someone who's, when it all, pays off, is able to say, yeah, that was Kirsty's idea the whole time. Because those are the people that you want to, really stay near in the workplace. And a lot of people won't do it.
And you have to, like you said earlier, surround yourself with people who are going to be supportive and supporting, and you do the same. Not every woman is born with that deep sense of self, that even it was even tested in the culture in which we all live, in the the world. Your bigness, your desires, your ambition, your sense of self was questioned in the world. So many women have such deep questions inside of themselves because they have listened to the world a little bit more. What would you say to someone who's unsure about getting coached, unsure about leaning into experts, unsure about what they can be? What would be that last little tidbit, Kirsty, that you would say to them about that?
I always say, if it makes you have butterflies or it makes you anxious, it's probably what you're supposed to be doing. And, roller coasters aside, I think we're all used to feeling that in the workplace, or, when something, and in turn, when something doesn't feel right, it isn't. And that's it. Like, you don't have to consider it. I mean, even in my coming out journey, like I knew for years, and I think that if we just trusted our gut a little bit more as women, men are trusting their gut left
all
and
the
right.
time, right?
They really are. And they're making decisions every day that are just on gut impulses and a lot of confidence. And that's it. So if we can do that a little bit more, this job, I was applying for several positions when I accepted this offer, and there was just something that just felt right, and I didn't question it. It wasn't maybe going to make the most sense on paper, but it just felt like the right fit. And for me, I ended up trusting my ethos a lot more than anything else. We actually, unfortunately, in Maine, had an awful shooting take place this past fall. And when that happened, I was applying for a lot of different jobs at the time. And the company I worked for was a news station. There was a lot going on, and it was a terrifying time to work where I worked. And I already was feeling a lot of unrest in that role. So it was very difficult to be dealing with this traumatic situation while working in a place where I knew like I was going to be leaving soon. And I was applying a lot of places, and some of the employers knew what was going on and listened to me when I asked to change interview times and everything else. And the bosses I have now all reached out. Everyone I was interviewing with, when they realized what I was going through, reached out personally to say, of course, change your interview. Of course, do whatever you need to do. We are here when you're ready. And that empathy showed me that, especially as a woman who wants to have kids and get married, I want a workplace that's going to prioritize me as a
Yes.
person
Yeah.
over everything.
Mhm.
And, I took a job that I was going to be paid less at, and I was going to take a job where I'm going to be working nights and doing things that were a little bit more than maybe other cushier jobs would have had. But I knew that I was going to be protected and I know I was going to be listened to. And that for me, I'm like, I can work with the rest of it. And I know that I can get myself where I need to be
Yeah.
here,
Make it
and
happen.
that they're going to really care about me. And I think it takes till you're probably near 30 to understand how important that is. Because in your early 20s, it's just like, I'm going to work like a dog and it's going to be worth it. And, as long as they have cold brew, it's fine. And I think that like when life starts actually hitting you and, you lose family members and family members get sick and
Mhm.
you go through breakups and things happen in your life, you start realizing who really is stepping up for me in
Right.
this time. And, those emotional and personal connections got me through my last job in all of my early 20s and everything that means.
Yeah.
And I know that whatever happens in the next few years, this workplace is going to support that. And like,
Mhm.
that just means so much to me.
Yeah.
And I think having that support, you can try anything and do anything and accomplish anything with the right unit and culture and people behind you.
Right. I love it. I love that you're a leader in your generation. And maybe you don't see it that way, but I do.
I
Um,
do.
okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to ask you to show us the words on your t-shirt, because I absolutely love it. Invest in women, pay women, hire women. Um, Being an advocate for women's power, women's authority, women's sports now, Miss Maine being a sort of unusual role model as Miss Maine as well. The whole thing just tickles me down to the deepest parts of my soul, Kirsty. I really have to say, you've come alive in a way that you're claiming all of the brightness that you bring to the world, and I am just so delighted and happy for the life that you have declared that you want, and you've gone after it. It's really
And again,
incredible.
even just this interview for me is like a full circle moment. Um, I talk a lot. Again, my first job, I asked for an internship when I was in high school. And my boss at the time was like, "You're crazy. You're 15 years old." And I think I've always had the foresight and judgment to trust myself.
Hmm.
And I was never the problem. I had
Yeah.
this power from 5 or 6 years old. You can see it in my little scrapbook pages and the
Yeah.
pictures of me. And
Hmm.
I think the best exercise for young women is to really study who they were as a kid and a young
Hmm.
girl and
Hmm.
through middle school, maybe.
Yep.
And then you'll start to see behavior changing
Yeah.
in high school and college to fit certain expectations.
Hmm.
And that's really where I lost myself the most. I had so much anxiety through college in my early 20s
Hmm.
and trying to check all these boxes that everyone else
Yeah.
really wanted of
Yeah.
me. And I found myself journaling and crying and being exhausted and everything that really didn't matter
Mm.
and everything that I really knew wasn't right. And I can't tell you the lightness of my life and just not worrying at all about what anyone else could care
That's a
or
big
think
one
or
though, isn't it?
say.
To let go of that and to be yourself, and how delightful that you get to participate in mentoring other young women as they're coming into your team. You're going to have exposure to these young women who uh, have been able to be themselves on the court, and to be able to help them see that in all aspects of their life. I mean, it's you're in such a beautiful, sweet spot for women's power right now, and I'm so proud and happy of who you've become and what you've chosen uh,
Thank you.
as a strong, courageous path.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that every day like my passion and my why has aligned with my
Yeah.
career. Um and if I would have asked anyone about this career change, 99% of people would have said absolutely do not do that. They would not have guided me in this direction and they wouldn't have had me move away from home. There would have been a lot of reasons to say
Yeah.
no. And it only took me saying, no, I know this is
Yeah.
correct. And it's going to just pay off. And I get that financially. And, if you have family commitments, and as women, we bear the load of a lot of people besides ourselves.
Hmm.
But if you just take a second to really trust your own gut and trust that like the next step you're taking just has to be the right one. It doesn't have to be 10 steps
Forever.
from now. It just
Exactly.
has to be this
Yeah.
one. You can only be so calculated. And I think I'm very type A. I was a calculated kid. I think we all want to make a plan for what the next 20 years are going to look like because it gives us peace. And the reality is something horrible could happen tomorrow or something amazing could happen tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And we're going to have to deal with those cards that were
Yeah.
dealt. So with that being said, it's like, what is that plan even worth if everything is going to change anyway? So just continue to like trust your gut in that next step and, believe in yourself and know that 90% of the time it might feel like, what am I doing?
Right.
We all feel like that
Yeah.
every single day. And I think make sure you're constantly, again, giving yourselves that nerve-wracking feeling, because one of the biggest issues in my last job, and nothing to do with the fact that I wasn't excelling, it was that I was bored.
Yeah.
I was ruminating a lot.
Right.
I was overthinking
Yeah.
things. And it just was due to the fact that I wasn't outside my comfort zone enough.
Yeah, you weren't growing.
And
Absolutely.
now every single day, I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
long as you're in a role where people believe you can figure it out and you believe you can figure it out, a new challenge is exactly the reason that I want to go off to work.
Totally. Growth versus boredom. Choosing growth all the time. Oh, it's been such a delight being with you. I'm continuing to cheer you on in every aspect. And of course, we'll be watching your pageantry come to its final conclusion, and
Yep.
just really keep being a beam of light everywhere you go. And
Thank you.
good luck to the Connecticut Sun and to you and your marriage in a year. I guess it's about a year that you're going to be tying the knot there. All the best, and I look forward to continuing to cheer you on and watch your successful journey. Yeah.